Yo, what's up? What's happening, everyone? How are you? I'm chilling. I hope you're all chilling too. What's good? This is gonna be a solo episode. You know, my infamous solo episodes. What's happening? Yeah, lots of things going on over here in my little corner of the universe. Lots of things. Um, and yeah, it is what it is. This is a solo episode. What am I even doing? Like, why? Why? Well, I think it's because I'm trying to be part of something bigger than myself and my own little world. Why? Why? I don't want to be part of something bigger than my own little world. Now, I think it's essential that we recognize we are part of something bigger than ourselves. I think that's part of being a human, is having that realization. Maybe not that you belong to, humanity, predicated on the notion of the human per se. Because what does that even mean? That's a big question. That's a big question I've been asking for a long time. And I actually feel like, we're making some headway in that direction recently with some of the conversations I've been having with some people. And that makes me feel good. Because, like, the notion of human is both an artifact of history, but it's also an undeniable thing. Category that you can't escape. We find ourselves always already here. And there's only so much you can do. There's only so much information you can garner about the object from the inside. And taking the category of human as an object, I think tracks with history, with the notion of history, and taking the notion of history as an object. Blah, blah, blah. We could do the infinite regress thing. I'm not here to do ontology, and I'm not here to make prescriptions. I'm also not here to make proscriptions. Just asking questions, just having fun. But I think being human, you have to realize you are part of something bigger than yourself. Now, what is that? Is that the world around you? Is that your family? Is that your faith? Is that your, race or ethnotype or haplogroup or whatever? Is that your language group? Is that your consumer category? I like to skateboard. I like, punk rock music. I like graffiti. And I like Star Trek and science fiction. Like, yeah, I'm a part of all these things, but really, no, I'm a part of the people that I know, the people in my life, the people with whom I conversate, the people with whom I have, kind of concrete relations and interrelations, and largely my family, largely the people that matter to me, and that I think is more real than this kind of abstract notion of the human, or at least I want it to be, because again, the category of human is undeniable. Like, it is a thing that I am. It is also a thing that you are if you're listening or watching. You are undeniably human. But what the fuck does that mean? And that's the question. And while the category of human is, an artifact of history, I also think it's true that the notion of history is an artifact of the human. We are these creatures that make notions out of things. We are these creatures that make distinctions about the world around us. We label things, we name things, we distinguish things, we discern between things and discriminate between things. And we come up with silly notions of belonging, of history, of telos, of eschatology, of meaning, of all this stuff, because we can't help it. We have no choice in the matter. I really do think we have no choice in the matter. Now, that is to say, the human is an animal with language. And because we're both, we are these metabolic, mechanistic, machinic animals, but we're also symbolic creatures, and we also live in this kind of ocean of meaning, and the kind of gulf that separates us is where we meet the innavigable depths, the impenetrable chthonic darkness. I don't know if that's how you say that word. That's how it's spelled, though. We live in the world of meaning, and of course, the world of meaning is the imperfect world, the incomplete world, the incompletable world, ultimately the ineffable. And it's because we can kind of climb out to those dizzying heights and meet each other together and bear the vertigo collectively. Share the load. Share the load, Mr. Frodo. Because we do that together, that's what makes us humans, I think. But that doesn't really say much about what is the category of human. And I'm okay with that, which is why I think it is a bit absurd that I'm sitting here at home. And, like I said, there's been a lot going on, had some ups and downs recently. But I also want to get some stuff done. There's a lot of things that are kind of simmering, a lot of pots that are simmering, and there's some things I want to bring to a boil. And I also wanted to release a podcast episode. Now, hopefully, I'll be having a couple conversations here within the next few days that'll make it up to the channel. But I also just kind of want to ramble. I like rambling. But I'm sitting here at home, and I have this, maybe it's an anxiety, maybe it's a restless energy, maybe who knows what it is. I don't know what it is exactly. And I'm like, okay, I just worked out a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit. Trying to take care of my body, trying to eat better, trying to work out, do stuff like that. So I just worked out a little bit. That's the second time I worked out, small, tiny miniature workouts, but I did 2 today. So I feel good about that. And I'm like, okay, I do have some stuff going on later today, but for right now, I have this window of time in my day, where I can sit and listen to a podcast about skinwalkers for the next 2 hours. I can go take a bath. I can go play a video game. I could try to write, which I did try to write. And it's not coming out right now. So I figured, well, this is something else I can do and at least feel productive, if not actually be productive. At least I can delude myself into thinking I did something worth doing with my time today. And I do think it is worth doing. I don't think that's just delusion. But I'm also asking the question, why? Why is that? Why do I imagine that I want to take part in your life, dear reader, by recording however long I'm going to be recording, and then taking the time to upload, and then taking the time to publish it and hit share and all that? Why? Why do I imagine that is productive? I don't know. Because in a sense, I think it is. Because in a sense, like, I'm trying to participate in a conversation that exists here on the internet. And that conversation is about kind of, what I just rambled about, the human, history, subjectivity, objects, all this stuff. And I feel like it's an important conversation to be having. And I'm engaged with it with some people. We have actual conversations back and forths. Small number of people, and then I'm trying to also participate, like here publicly online, and be like someone who you listen to, and that's, I don't know, that's weird, because again, going back to being part of something bigger than yourself, well, I feel that's an essential ingredient in the magic recipe to bake the human cake. I feel like that's not this, whatever this is, podcasts and, theory and philosophy on the internet and blah, 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 all this stuff. That's not what I'm referring to when I talk about being part of something bigger than myself. And it's also not the kind of vague notion of the human, although that's true and that's undeniable. And it's worth problematizing that. But like, I belong to something bigger than myself, in that I belong to the interrelations that I have with other people, my family, my friends, my neighbors, even the people I pass on the street when I'm driving, the people I interact with at the skate park. Like that's what I mean. This whole internet shit really bothers me. Really. I was just thinking about, I think about it a lot, but just right now, like 15 minutes ago, I was on the toilet and I was scrolling through Reddit, and I was scrolling through the crappy music subreddit, because that's like my favorite subreddit. There's some bangers there for sure. But there was like an MGK video, and I don't know when it's from. I don't know if it's recent. I don't know if it's new. I don't know if it's 5 years old. I have no idea. I've never listened to MGK. I have no desire to. I don't care. But like, someone shared an MGK video, and it was like, this dude's still talking shit about Eminem. And I feel similar about Eminem to the way I feel about MGK. I don't care. I did not like Eminem. I have maintained my distaste for Eminem. I can see that he's talented. He's very talented, I think. But it's not my cup of tea. Now, I love hip hop music. Eminem has just never been my bag. So there's that. But it was, you got me. Congratulations, buddy. I watched your little video. I downvoted it, because that's what I do when I go on Reddit. I downvote things. Sometimes I upvote things, but most of the time, I'm downvoting. I don't always interact with posts, but when I do, I downvote them. Because I'm the coolest man in the world. But like, so I clicked on it, and I hit the unmute thing, and I listened to it, and it was a shitty song. I don't know. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever heard. It was far from good. But, I like an awful lot of music, and that just wasn't for me. Anyway, whatever. The song was strange to me in a way. I don't know. Maybe that's what all music sounds like now. I don't think I'm like in a old person bubble. I try to keep up with the new stuff. I'm not that old yet, dude. I fucking really like a lot of hyper pop music. I like there's a lot of music that's coming out today that I listen to and I enjoy. But the MGK, I was just like, oh, this is trash. But like the whole song, MGK was kind of like tooting his own horn, and he was like, I do this for the city, and they will like fucking protect me, and I'm the coolest motherfucker ever, and I blow all my money, and look how cool I am and stuff. And like, he was like gatekeeping his scene. Kind of. Yeah, I think that's what I think that's ultimately what that, like, how that operates functionally, like making a song about like, I'm so cool and I spent all my money and I'm fucking cool. Ultimately, I think that functions as like a gatekeeping mechanism for the local scene. Now, he's obviously not just a local artist, he's an international artist at this point. But for, you know, I think a lot of people interacting with the local scene matters just as much as like international success. And I think that goes all the way back to like the 70s and the 80s in the nascency of hip hop and also, you know, underground fucking punk and hardcore and shit like that. Like, it's important to interact with the local scene because that's where you get street cred. And what is street cred? Well, first and foremost, street cred is like, oh, hold on. I had some tobacco in my teeth. I had to pull it out. Street cred is like evidence that you're about that life. Like other people that will back you up if people are talking shit. So street cred is like currency or like a type of value that operates in maybe siloed communities, maybe impoverished communities, but it's also like not just in impoverished communities. It's also like in the office. Like you go to work, people have reputations. Like, oh yeah, that dude's down. Like he'll bust his ass. He'll work hard. Or oh, that dude's a bitch. Or oh, that dude's lazy. Or oh, don't trust that lady. She'll rat you out. Blah blah blah. Whatever. Like everyone has a reputation, and reputation carries value in, you know, scenes or in walled gardens, whatever, in fractional societies, subgroups within, you know, larger society, if there is such a thing as larger society anymore. I think the only way you can define contemporary society is that it's ineffable. And it is this infinite fucking thing that can't be totalized under one word. Nicholas Luhmann talks about this as well. Like, you know, what is global society? Well, it's the social field that kind of can't be defined in any one totalized way anymore, since it is this kind of global thing, and it has become infinite. And it's all just kind of like endless reproduction. But in subgroups, we'll say, or sub-societies, we'll say, or siloed environments, we'll say, reputation is like a modifier to value. And there's different types of reputation. Like you can get a reputation just based on like doing work and not really like talking about it and just kind of doing it. And I think that, I don't know, maybe that's like first order reputation. And then you can kind of develop like a second order reputation that's based not on actions, but on words or maybe on performances. Now performances is a little bit weird because in a sense we're always performing, even if we're engaged in genuine or authentic activity. There's still an element of performance to it. And that's not, so performance isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like performance is just something you can't escape. That's what I can't fucking stand about people who talk about virtue signaling and vice signaling. It's like, dude, everything is signaling. Just like it bothers me when people talk about hypocrisy. It bothers me when people want to cancel other people for dumb shit. Like, dude, come on. We all have this like inbuilt need to transgress. So if we go around like policing ourselves or policing each other to death, then we're all eventually going to wind up canceled because we can't help ourselves. We need limits just as much as, or rather, we need transgression just as much as we need limits, because we are like, there's this constitutive element to us, to our psyches as individuals and as members of the larger collective, that is just transgressive. We can't not. We have no choice in the matter, just like we have no choice in the matter when it comes to meaning. So I think it's all, yeah, there's way better stuff to like talk about and actually get upset about. But like when it comes to performance and signaling and hypocrisy and transgression, cancellation and all this stuff, it's like, come on, man. These are all like constitutive elements of the human, and we're all trying to like excise them surgically. Like we're all trying to pare down these bits that make us feel some kind of way. I don't know. Does it make us uncomfortable? I don't know. Does it make you uncomfortable? I don't know. I'm sure it makes me at least a little bit uncomfortable because I think about it a lot. So there's something there. There's some frisson of jouissance that, like, I don't know. There's something there because I think about it, and it bothers me. But whatever it is, we need to stop. We need to stop trying to prune the bush, and maybe start trying to like water the roots a little bit, you know, or worry about like the nutrients that the roots have access to, or the leaves, or whatever, if we're going to run with this metaphor of human as flora, which I don't think is a good metaphor. But anyway, so you have your first order reputation, or your first order street cred that kind of comes from actions, just bare actions, genuine, authentic activity. And then maybe you have a second order reputation, or a second order level of cred that maybe you can kind of foster yourself. And then you'll have like a third order or a tertiary reputation, tertiary cred, that's kind of out of your hands. And it's kind of in the hands of others through their words and actions in response to your words and actions. So let's see if that tracks. Your primary reputation is still a reaction to your activities from others. And they develop beliefs based on your actions. And then your secondary reputation would be reactions to your words, reactions to your, performances, just your performances, just your signaling. And even though performance and signaling is always a part of activity, there's also performance and signaling that is not connected to activity. But there's still reputation, cred, whatever, like it's just beliefs developing in reaction to you as the kind of primary actor. So maybe we could say that primary and secondary reputation or cred is like a firsthand witness account of you. And then maybe like a tertiary reputation or cred is when that leaves the circle of like concrete interactions that you've actually had, and other people talk to other people who have not interacted with you about you. And so that makes sense. Maybe not. Who knows? This isn't concrete. This isn't rigorous. This is me rambling because I want to take part in something larger than listening to a fucking podcast about skinwalkers for the next 2 hours. So instead, I'm rambling. But reputation or cred, be it street or otherwise, is like a modifier to your actual value or actual utility. So in like a controlled setting, you are a known quantity, like at work, where they track things. They have KPIs, and they have, they have knowledge, or maybe in the military, or maybe in prison, or maybe in school, or whatever, where they actually track things, where there's a centralized, or at least a coherent, cohesive point of control. It could be decentralized. I don't know. But there is a coherent operator at the top. You have a utility, you have a value. And that's, if it's at work, it's how many bricks can you move per hour, we'll say. And then you can extrapolate all the things. How many spreadsheets can you do per hour? How many sales calls can you make per hour? Blah, 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 blah. But in subgroups or sub-societies or, what did I say? Siloed environments? Sure. Where there is no coherent, cohesive, centralized, there's no hard control. It's a little looser. It's a little more postmodern. And it has more to do with straight social rather than, economic stuff. Your reputation and your cred becomes a modifier to that hard utility value that you carry. So maybe in the setting of a record label, you will have a utility value, like a hard number, based on the amount of records you can sell, the amount of or downloads your shit gets, I don't know, or the amount of tickets, the amount of seats you can fill, whatever. And that, like, in the siloed environment that is the record label, that's all economic, that's all just about numbers, it's all just about your utility and what can you do. But those numbers rely on the siloed environment that is the scene outside of the record label as a kind of cohesive unitary object that is Warner Brothers Records or whatever. Outside of that, like Warner Brothers Records sits on top of the music scene in general, or culture in general, even, because, it's not just about songs. It's also about, how you appear on social media, and it's about, did you act in that movie, and did you post the right thing on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and are you signaling and performing properly, and blah, 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 blah. But there's like a loose social bubble, like a hovercraft. Hovercrafts, I don't even know if people know this anymore. I remember when I was a kid, I was all excited about hovercrafts because, like, Back to the Future, the hoverboard. And then when I learned that we actually have hovercrafts, but they ride on like big sacks of air with giant fans that blow air down to inflate the bubble. So it's like the hovercraft rides on a pocket of air. That's a thing. There's like a pocket of air that's soft and squishy and malleable, and it changes, and it's generally probably pretty predictable, but it's also not hard numbers. It shifts and sways, and it relies more on reputation than it does on actual utility. And lots of things have that. I don't want to say everything has that, because I'm sure there are some things that are still just kind of like hard, autistic, by the numbers. But I think probably many, many, many things are a bit of both, and that varies. It's all on a spectrum. So in music and entertainment, it's important to maintain a level of street cred in the local scene, because these types of music in general rely on this myth of like the underground, like that, like they rely on this belief that these really are people, oppressed people, underclass people, really rising above their material conditions and expressing themselves truly and artistically and authentically and genuinely and doing this noble thing. And that's, a good thing, and we should support that. We should be happy to support that, because that is the human spirit triumphing above, horrible, miserable conditions in inner cities and shit like that. But that's a myth. Like the music industry, the entertainment industry, like it's all manufactured. It's all always been manufactured. And that's not to say that like the artists who are doing it are full of shit. Like many, if not most of them, genuinely believe that they are engaged in this authentic pursuit of expression, of their spirit, or the spirit of their time, or the spirit of their community, or whatever. And so I don't think that should be discounted, and I don't think you should, discredit them or whatever. I think they're true believers. But the problem lies with we should not be true believers. We should be aware of the kind of material conditions and the kind of systems and structures that support this culture industry, this spectacle that kind of sedates us all and tranquilizes us all, and sucks our blood dry. Our blood in the form of money that we spend and attention that we give. Yeah. But anyway, also, I think MGK is probably a bitch. Probably. But he's doing this thing, and he's gatekeeping his scene, and he's also like trying to provide like a bulwark. He's trying to like shore up the walls and be like, yeah, Cleveland's where it's at, and I'm from Cleveland, and I'm down, and I'll bang on anybody, and all my homies from Cleveland got my back, and blah, 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 this and that. To support the local scene, to kind of keep up his relationship with the social, so he can like continue to thrive in the entertainment industry or whatever. And sure, dude, whatever, do you. Like, I don't care. I rarely come across MGK or anything to do with him. But I was thinking about it. And then that got me thinking about this, like the fact that for the last, couple weeks, I've had this pressure to record a podcast episode and kind of take part in this larger conversation that's playing out on the internet. And thinking about the theory and philosophy internet world as a scene. And like, what does that mean? And like, am I a figure in that scene, or am I just someone watching from the sidelines, or whatever. And I don't fucking know, dude. I have no idea. I definitely don't want to kind of uncritically take it as a scene or like a thing. Because I think it's not. I think currently there are countless conversations being had here on the internet and also in real embodied, spaces. And I think that's great. And I think that's what we should aspire to do is take part in conversations with others and not so much take it as like a scene. But there is still a question, because it has no choice but to present itself in this way. And I think that's, due to the medium and our relation to it. We've all kind of been habituated into this thing where we sit back and we passively consume and or actively consume and actively participate in these spaces and get in comment sections and join live streams and join, talk, we. And I'm not even, that's not all bad either. Like, we need that. That's an essential ingredient. But also, I don't know. I think I am not very optimistic right now. And it's kind of like, well, what the fuck am I even doing? Why am I even here recording this? And I know I always fucking find my way back here to this point of questioning, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Nevertheless, I continue doing it. So there's that. So those are my thoughts on that. I've also been thinking a lot about a lot of things. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and hopefully we'll be having a conversation soon about, is history and post-modernity. Sean and I have had a good dialogue for the last several months about, I think, history. Now, we started off talking about like narcissism and, solipsism and postmodernity and this and that. But I think I've come to understand that conversation has been about history the entire time. And I think my position on history, and it's weird, I don't know. It's not like a concrete thing. But I just earlier today was talking to Mikey. And I think I've come to believe that if one like uncritically takes history, or even critically engages in like critical theory and is a little bit postmodern and gets a little weird and does some deconstruction and tries to be the understander, like even if you do that, but like if you take history with this notion of history and the notion of the human, you're kind of left with only three choices. You can either be a Christian or a believer in the mystic, a believer in the divine, and have this kind of telos that you will be reunited in some perfect union with the God. You can take the capitalist position and you can say, well, it's through our activity and our creations and our technology, we will eventually set the spirit of man free. And whether that spirit of man is intelligence as such, as, Nick Land and many others would have it, or if it's some kind of like post-human, utopian, transhuman thing, like a lot of people on both the left and right would have it, it's still this strange telos that ends in utopia by way of, technological innovation, which I think is the capitalist point of view. Or you have the communist point of view that's very similar to the capitalist point of view. It just thinks that we can achieve this union by, eschewing certain necessary features of the capitalist worldview, namely value. So I think those are like the three courses that you can take if you depart right now. You can take the Christian path, which isn't necessarily just Christian. I'm including all kind of mystical and all divine belief under the Christian heading, because I'm a white guy from America, and it is what it is. Makes sense to me. And I will explain that in the future. Hopefully I'll have a piece coming out sometime soon. Right now it's tentatively titled Postmodern Jesus, but who knows if it'll be called something else. But that's why I tie it to Christianity. So you have the Christian pathway that believes in, a divine union in whole, complete perfectness with God. You have the capitalist pathway that believes in a technological utopia. And you have the communist pathway that believes in a human utopia. And the capitalist and the communist, there's a lot of crosstalk going on between those two. So I need to take more time to actually kind of figure out the differences. But as I see it right now, those are the three pathways through history. If you were to depart right now off into the future, that is it. And I think we need a radical break with that, because all three of those pathways are kind of predicated on this belief that we will have a perfect reunion, that there will be some like perfect, complete object at the end of the road. The subject will subside into substance. And I think that there are a lot of well-meaning people who take that for granted, or don't really understand how important it is, how important alienation is, and how important incompleteness is, and how important the infinity that is each and every one of us is. It can never be totalized. It can never be made commensurable with any other, much less any big other. Because that's where we are. We swim out into the depths, the unknowable depths, and we dance under the water together. We do synchronized swimming routines, and they're beautiful and sensuous and luscious and creative and all these things, and they're unique. Each one is a snowflake, and they're infinite echoes through the universe, and they can never be fully known by any one of the participants. And that's what we are. We are these ineffable creatures to each other and to ourselves. And the idea that we can wrap everything up with a nice, neat little bow, and we can all become disalienated, and we can all live in perfect unity and harmony under one bold headline. I think that is the death of the subject. And I think that's horrible, because I'm a subject, not an object. So I think we need a radical break with history. We need a radical rethinking of what it means to be human. And like the thing with that is we need to never stop rethinking what it means to be human. And we need to never stop reinterpreting the world around us and our history and our future and our present. Because the minute you stop and the minute you say everything is set in stone, everything is an object that is totally understandable, I can hold it in my hand and I can understand it from all angles and I can know the inside and the outside, and I am God and I am unchanging. Because for God, time doesn't exist, right? Like the minute you do that, I think you've lost the special sauce. You've forgotten some key ingredient in the recipe that bakes this magnificent little human cake. And remember, folks, the cake has always been a lie. And that's the thing. There is no cake. Nevertheless, here we are. There's a Netflix show called Is It Cake? I think it's Netflix. It might be something else. It might not be Netflix. But there's a show called Is It Cake? And they just cut things with knives. And some things are cake. And they cut right into them. And other things are real things. And they can't cut right into them. And I've never seen the show, but I am aware of it. And I understand the premise. At least I think I understand the premise. I don't know what the premise is. I just know that there's a show called Is It Cake? And there's a meme or a trope or whatever. Things are sometimes cake. And that's funny to me. Because I like the cake is a lie. Even though I never played that video game. It's from a video game, folks. Google it. But anyway, I've kind of run out of steam. And maybe that's a good thing. I think it probably is a good thing. But for now, I'm going to go do something else. And I'm happy that I ranted and didn't stop. And I will see you soon. Thanks, peeps. Peace.